Okay, now you will notice the deck by you is a little blue container. You see that little blue container on top of it? It says Connective Tissue Slides or CT Slides or something like that. See it? Hear it? Yeah. We are going to look at some slides today, amongst other things. So, anatomy is broken up into two broad categories. There is gross anatomy, and when I say gross, I don't mean disgusting. I mean gross, sort of like the French word for large, gross. It is gros. It is the anatomy that we can see with our eyes. All right, and that's this stuff here. Right? And then there's microscopic anatomy, right? And to see microscopic anatomy, we need some microscopes. If my lecture was shorter today, I would have gotten to talk about Robert Hooke, but you'll hear me talk about him next time, so never fear. To understand an organism, how it actually works, sometimes you need to understand the small as well as the large. And so there are things in this class that are going to require us to look at microscopic anatomy so we can understand why this tissue is responding this way. There are like 200 different tissue types or cell types in the body. I have picked out 6 of them that are actually going to be useful for us to understand. All right? And I picked out a slide for each of those. They're in those little cases there, and we're going to look at them today. So starting from the back, I probably should have organized them in reverse order, but I'm going to start with the one in the very back. Which is it there? Is it the hyoid cartilage? Or is it the dense regular connective tissue? Areolar. Oh, so important. Areolar. Yeah. So the way this works, these slides, some of them are very old, and that's okay because old slides tend to be done better. They just don't make them like they used to. Back in the day, you could get these awesome slide preps, and nowadays, most of the new slides you buy are crap. So it's okay that they're old, but they are fragile and hard, if not impossible, to replace some of them very well. So please be careful. The way to be careful is just to follow my instructions on how to use a microscope. Now, I realize that many of you have probably already used a microscope. Who has used a microscope before? Okay, good. So most of you, good. And I'm glad you have that experience. I am going to tell you how to use a microscope so you do it right every time, foolproof, never mess it up, okay? So step 1, you reach on the side without looking through the microscope, and you dial the big outer knob towards you. The course adjusts, and it's going to lower the stage. It's going to lower that stage right now. So dial it towards you. Yep. Dial it right on down. Next, take the objective, which take the part that has the lenses on it, and rotate it to the shortest one. It should be the 10x. Okay. Always start at the lowest mag when you're doing a slide. Lower the deck, turn to the lowest mag, and then you take your slide and you put it on the stage. And there's a little clip, a little lever that you can pull over and get it so it holds the slide in there. Now there's a bar that's hanging down off the side of the stage. Yeah, there's 2 knobs on that bar. Go ahead, take a hold of those and dial them a little bit. You'll notice that they move the stage around. Okay? So move it around so that the center of the circle of the slide is centered over the hole in the microscope. All right? Now, the easy part, let's turn the microscope on. Turn it on. There's a little switch on the side someplace. the microscope correctly is you're going to have to get the eyepieces to match your eyes, and they can bend so to be near or further. It helps to get your chair to the right height. So you're not craning your neck or whatever. There's a little bar under your chair on the right-hand side, a handle. If you stand up and you pull it up, it'll make the chair go up. All right, next. Before you put your eyes on the scope, you're going to stand back and you're going to dial the scope up, holding that big bar on the right-hand side or the left-hand side. Go all the way to the back on the neck of the scope. You're going to dial the big knob away from you and pull it up. Right? And what you're looking for here, you do not want, there's no danger of it on the 10X, but in general, you want to go up as high as you can without the lens touching the slide. It's no problem on 10X, it never will. But on the higher ones, you have to be careful of this, because this is how you break the slide. So you don't do it with your eyes in the scope. You do it looking away to make sure that the slide is never touching. And then you're going to dial it, put your eyes to it, and you're going to dial it back towards you to bring it into focus. So you look through, and if you are a person who does not have the same vision in both eyes, like if you're wearing corrective lenses, you'll find it easier to take the lenses off your head, and you will look through one eye, close one eye, and look through one eye, and bring it into focus, and then you'll switch eyes, and so the first eye you have open is the left. The right eye. You leave the right eye open, you bring it into focus by dialing it down through the sharp, and when you see it pass through focus, then you move to the fine adjustment, which is a small knob. You bring it into focus with the one eye, and then you switch eyes, and you don't touch that big focus knob anymore. You reach up onto the eyepiece of the left eye, and you dial that so that eye is in focus. Okay? And so now, when you open both eyes, they should both be in focus without the need for corrective lenses, without your glasses. Okay? If your eyes are the same, then you don't have to go through that rigmarole. Okay? And you want to get it so that the images coming through both tubes merge into one and aren't some kind of like jumbled two images. Okay? So you're checking it out under the 10X, and you're going to move. You can move around using that bar that I showed you. That's on the side. Okay. You can't see it all out of it.
Well, I can, but
okay, if you have contacts, just do it with the contact, whatever image you have in both of them. All right. So, what was the next step here? Okay. Yes?
should we let the other two people?
Yeah. You're going to get a chance when I get to talking about the tissue slide. For now, I'm just explaining to any of you how to use it. Then, when you want to switch to a higher magnification, say you see something that you like, you get the stage so that thing that you want to look closer at is right in the middle. You get it so you adjust it so it's right sitting in the middle. Then you take your eyes off the scope. You dial the big knob towards you to lower it. Yep. And then you switch to the next highest magnification. Then, still without looking through it, you dial it back up again. And this is where you got to be careful. So you get that lens as close to it as possible without touching it, unless it's all the way up and then you're fine. You get as close to it as you can without it touching it, and now you can look through it. But the important part is this is exactly the moment when students break the slides. You have to remember to dial it down instead of dialing it up. Because if you dial it up, it'll break. But you're dialing it down, and you will definitely come down through the focus. All right? So if you follow that set of instructions, you will always be able to focus the slide, and you will never break a slide. But the key one is bringing it up to the lens by looking not through the lenses, but looking just at the slide itself in the real world. And then when you look through the lenses, going to dial it towards you, so you're bringing it down. All right? So, I'm just going to give a little bit of an introduction as to how to look at slides, what you're seeing when you're looking at slides, interpreting them. So, these slides are called histological specimens. And the word histological is a term that means it has been stained. It has been stained with some kind of dye that attaches selectively to something, some structures, but not others. And it's going to increase the contrast of what you're looking at, all right? And then they take that tissue that's been soaked in whatever they soaked it in, and they slice it up with something called a microtome. A super, super finely thin sliced piece of tissue, like thinner than paper, very thin. They put it on the glass, and they put the cover slip on it, and then they look at it. So the sectioning is going to take three-dimensional structures, like maybe a tube that goes like this. There are tubes that go like that in your body. And if you're taking a slice through that tube, you're not going to see that tube doing all the stuff in 3D. You're going to see it like passing through the plane back and forth, right? So you have to somehow reconstruct that in your head a little bit, understand what you're looking at. And I'll give you an example. So for example, here's an egg, a nice hard-boiled egg. Everybody's had one of those, or at least seen one. And if you were to take slices of an egg, a slice right here would look like that. A slice here, you'd see the egg, but then a little bit of yolk. Bigger yolk, smaller yolk, no yolk. So if you were to look at these different sections, you'd say, oh, there must be this yellow ball inside. All right? That's pretty straightforward. Now here's a squiggly tube. And in reality, the tube is like this. Or here's some other tube like this. If you cut the tube across here, you're just going to see two circles. They don't seem to be joined, they're just two circles. But in fact, it represents a tube that we got a cross-section of, and so on and so forth. It's maybe kind of obvious to some of you, but I'm just going through it. Maybe a squiggly tube. You see this weird structure here. But that's just because you're slicing it along the long axis of that tube. All right? This making sense? Yeah, pretty straightforward. So I won't belabor this. We don't need all. Okay, yeah. So I will say this: a smear. Sometimes some of these things are going to be a smear, like the areolar tissue. Are we all on areolar tissue? Yeah. Areolar tissue is a smear. It's like some tissue they got and did just what the name says. They smeared it out. They didn't take a microtome. They just took a little bit of it and they smeared it on the plate. You can't really slice areolar tissue. It doesn't slice. Sometimes they get a spread. A smear can be spinal cord or blood. A spread is areolar tissue, so it's like spread it out on there. Blood, smear, liquids get smeared on the glass. All right. So we're going to talk about this in the lecture more, but I'm introducing it here. There are different tissue types in the body. In fact, there's 4 tissue types, and like I said, I will go through this in detail in the lecture. But one of the 4 tissue types is connective tissue. Connective tissue is super important when you're talking about yoga because it's the stuff that holds you together. So it's the packing materials of the body, etc. There are 3 types of connective tissue in an adult. There's areolar tissue, which is what we're looking at now. There's adipose tissue, which we'll look at in a bit. And then there's reticular tissue, which I'm not going to have you look at.
Is that the same as this dense regular connective?
Nope. So these are loose connective tissues. As soon as I'm done, I'm going to get to dense connective tissues. So in general, yes, ma'am. Let's do it.
So you say in adults, you're talking about
Children have all of these, but children have stem cell populations that adults don't have. So, in general, with an anatomical term, anatomists and scientists in general like to be efficient, for better or worse. And when they say something, it's not usually spurious. They're not just saying it to hear themselves say it. They say, particularly in anatomy, if you say the levator labii superioris, the muscle that makes me smile. I'm saying levator labii superioris. I say superioris because it's on the top of my lip. Well, I didn't say superioris. If it was the only one, I wouldn't need to say superioris. Saying superioris implies that there's a depressor labii inferioris, one that's below. If you say one thing, if you indicate one thing that's a directional term or something, it's because there's probably an opposite. So loose connective tissue, the fact that I'm saying loose connective tissue, if it was the only type of connective tissue, I wouldn't say loose, I would just say connective tissue. There is a dense connective tissue, which is what we're going to get to in a moment. But in terms of loose connective tissue, the two that we're going to look at are areolar and adipose tissue. Next. Okay, so let's actually talk about areolar tissue. So now get your slide in focus. Where are we at? Are you guys at the 10 or the 40 there? Yeah. See what you see. Tell me what you see. Do you see something reasonably like this? Yeah? Yeah, take a look at it. Let me help walk you through what you're looking at. So, areolar tissue is a type of connective tissue that is all over the body. It's all over the body. It is found underneath the papillary layer of the skin. It's super stretchy but strong connective tissue. It's what makes your skin able to pull on your skin, like do this and have it come back to the shape that it was in, areolar tissue. Its name, I believe its name comes from the areola of the human breast, so because there's a lot of it there. And if anybody's ever seen a woman breastfeeding, they'll know that tissue is really stretchy. Right? It's very stretchy tissue. Areolar tissue, very strong, but kind of elastic connective tissue. Here's what it's made up of. So we'll look at areolar tissue a lot more in lecture, but it's made up of these elastic fibers. Yes, ma'am. Do not get that. Look at that. Where are you get that? Okay. So we'll go here and you're up. Yeah? Yeah, no problem. Hey man, it's cool. It's cool. You're here, you're not here because you're an expert microscopist. You're here to become an expert microscopist. That's it. Yeah. It's beautiful, isn't it? It's amazing. Microscopy is so magical. I think it's magical. Alright, so these elastic fibers that you're seeing, they are like rubber bands. They're like elastic bands. They are. They're made of a protein called elastin, which we'll talk about in class, but they're super stretchy. Super stretchy. You can stretch them, and then they'll bring the areolar tissue back to the shape that it was at previously. Then there are what are called collagen fibers. So you'll notice the elastic fibers, they're the dark, really thin lines. They're darker than everything else in your slide, and they're thinner than everything. So this is a nice picture, but this picture is not going to get in the lab practical. It's important to make sure that you're seeing the structures I talk about on the slide, because that's how, if any of them appear, that's how they'll appear. Next are these collagen fibers. Now the collagen fibers pick up the stain a little bit better than a lot of the space here, but they're not as dark as the elastic fibers. And you'll notice them being kind of like the red ropes, and they're more like a hawser rope, like one of those ropes that hold the big ships in. They're super strong, braided proteins that don't really stretch very well. They don't stretch especially well, but they're very strong along the length of the rope itself, the rope of collagen. And you'll see them in a crisscrossing pattern all over the place in the areolar tissue. It makes the areolar tissue strong. The elastic fibers make it stretchy, then the collagen makes it strong, so it doesn't tear. Because it's actually pretty easy to tear elastic fibers if you go too far. Then the collagen prevents that. Now, there are 9 different cell types of connective tissue cells, that major categories of connective tissue cells. We'll talk about them in lecture. I'm not going to go into any kind of depth except mentioning them in lecture, except 4 of them. There's 4 that will be important, sort of important, for our discussions, and some of them are mentioned here. So there are fibroblasts. Fibrocytes is another one that's related, but it's not related to this one. But they're fibroblasts. The macrophage is a type of white blood cell. I showed you that. I showed that. You know, is my high school class. Anyways, macrophage is like a white blood cell. Macro means large. Phage means to eat something. So it's these big white blood cells that are pretty crazy looking that go around and eat pathogens. All of these cell types are found somewhere in this tissue. What do I have listed as ones on there to identify? Where was it? I had fibroblast, elastic, and collagen fibers, and that's it. Yeah, so the vast majority of the cells that you see in that slide are going to be fibroblasts. And you're going to notice those as the kind of like cell-looking things, the little circles.
Can you not really tell the difference on looking at it between like the fibroblasts and the 3 macrophages?
3 macrophages? Well, in this cartoon, I certainly couldn't tell the difference. It's probably fairly rare that you're going to be able to identify a macrophage in there, so I didn't put it on the list. The vast majority of the cells are fibroblasts, followed by fibrocytes, which are difficult to distinguish from one another. There will be some other ones. We'll get to them. But this, for now, what I have on that list is what I want you to be able to know. It's collagen and elastic fibers, which makes it stretchy and strong. And the cells are mostly fibroblasts. So these are the cells that are making the collagen. They're the cells that are making the elastic fibers. Okay? So that's really all I want you to be able to recognize anatomically, because we'll talk about it in lecture. But anatomically, areolar tissue, it's all over the place. Anytime there's needs to be some stretchy and strong stuff somewhere in the body, it's this stuff. Next, adipose tissue, commonly known as fat. But fat is a misleading term. Fat is a type of molecule. Adipose tissue has large vacuoles that stores fat. All right. We know it as commonly it's considered to be fat by lay people, non medical terminology. But the word is adipose tissue. The tissue itself is made up of adipocytes. So the word, you'll see is CYTES. That word just means cell. It's the root word that indicates a cell type. The word blast that you saw last time, like fibroblast, you may come in contact, in fact I think we will come in contact with blast in other cell types. A blast indicates that a cell is not fully matured. It's still functional, just like a kid, a prepubescent child, is a functional human being. They go to school, they give hugs, they're lovely people, nice drawings, that kind of thing, played. But they're not adults, right? So a blast is the same sort of thing. A fibroblast can mature, doesn't always mature into a fibrocyte. These are cells that make the fibers we're talking about, the elastic fibers and the collagen fibers. Right? So fibroblasts, any kind of blast is not fully differentiated or not fully matured cell type. And if you see site, again, that means it has fully matured. Okay? So adipose tissue is fat tissue. Adipocyte is a fat cell. Okay? So adipose tissue, there's not a whole lot to look at. On there, you're going to see they're mostly empty space. Looks like empty space. That's not actually empty space. Those are big balloons that are entirely filled with fats, lipids. Oh, yeah. Let's take the time now to actually go look at the adipose slide. Pardon me. Thank you for keeping me on track. Let me get out of the way. How's it going? Who needs help? Who wants moral support?
So, in our lab practical,
Yeah.
will we go for the lab practical? Will we like pull up and show you each?
No. What would happen if I have, and I'm not promising, I'll probably have a couple slides at least. And what will happen is the slide will be set up, and there'll be a pointer. Some of your scopes have pointers on them. There'll be a pointer pointing to a structure, and there'll be a card that says, what is this thing? What's at the end of the pointer, or name this cell type, or what's the structure of the pointer. The only things you're going to be responsible for are identifying the tissue type and any of the structures that are listed on that list underneath those tissue types. Does that make sense? Yeah, so I've pared it down. This is very focused anatomy. Just body's a lot bigger than we're exploring, but just for like stuff that's relevant. How's it going? How you doing, Oscar? Is it working? You got some adipose tissue on there?
Yeah, you were
So I'm going to go through all these slides, and then I'm going to have to leave because my wife is daring northward today at the campaign event downtown in Portland. So I'm on double dad duty, and I'll have to ski out of here. Yeah, it's like a fundraising thing we're doing in Portland, and she's going to be on stage talking with my wife's star. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to go through all these slides, and I'll mill about and help you guys, but I'm going to have to duck around the corner. You guys can stay if you want to leave. I put a key, I should say this, I put a key to this lab on reserve in the library, the science library. You go to the desk, you just flash in your ID, and they'll give you a key, and you can come up here and come into the lab anytime you want. If you want to go, say it's a lazy, rainy Sunday afternoon, and you want to come up and study the models, you can at any point. So I'll leave that there. Yeah, Poland is just right down in the bottom of this building. It's on the main floor of this next building over. lovely library place to study. Yeah. You're going to get to meet Cara Kugelmeyer, next week? Something like that. I don't know when she comes into the class to tell you about how to use the library's resources. So I'm making that happen. All right. Looking at it, everybody got an adipocyte up there? So the big empty spot is the fat vacuoles. Yes, ma'am?
It's really hard to see.
So start on the low res, and then let's open up your apertures. So see some length there. Yeah. And then let's find our sample. Where is it? So that's low. Let's start high. Start high, go low. Oh yeah, there we go. And then, so there it is. And let's, these are phase contrast scopes. Right there. Dial you in. Okay, this looks pretty good. So take a look at that. You can see that's pretty zoomed out. And it's very faint. And then you're going to be able to zoom in a little closer. Follow the protocol like that. Yeah, you see that there? Okay. Anybody else having a hard time? Everybody good? All right. And so there's not a lot to see here. There's fat, and there are these little berries, these little dots that you'll see in there. And those are simply the nuclei of the cell. Nuclei, what are you talking about? For those of you who don't remember from your high school biology, we will go over the parts of a cell in lecture. I'm going to do quite a bit of background, science background, so we have all the same language. So don't fear that I don't remember my chemistry from high school, I never took chemistry, I didn't take biology, I don't know any stuff. I'm going to tell you what you need to know. All right? I'm not going to assume you know any of it. And if I do assume that you know something, you stop me right in my tracks. You guys aren't science majors. I'm not expecting you to know any of that coming in. So you stop me and I'll go over something. Okay? So adipose tissue is not, well, before I say what it's not, let's say what it is. It is great for storing energy. Fat is an excellent way to store energy. It is a great way to insulate the body. Last year we got a new puppy, this little dog named Mrs. Frisbee. Maybe you'll see her around sometimes, a little Boston Terrier. When we first got this puppy, it was springtime. It's like 70 degrees. It's like a day like today. She had no fat on her body, and she was like this. She was just shivering, right? She was shivering. She was a little, like, skinny puppy. And she grew and got some fat on her body, and now she's warm and happy to run around. Adipose tissue is insulation on your body. Energy storage, insulation. What else? Yeah, oh yeah, I'm sorry, thank you. It provides physical cushioning, actual padding. For example, there's a skirt of fat that is beneath your abdominal muscles. So maybe you've seen some like weightlifter, not bodybuilder, but weightlifter guy that has some cut abs, right? But also kind of a gut. How has he got a like ripped abs and a big gut? It's because this fatty skirt that person has, which is called the omentum, and it's been removed in this character here, protects your innards. It protects the organs inside of you, your abdomen, but it's beneath those rectus abdominal muscles. So that can like give, particularly bodybuilders or weightlifters, it's important to have that to prevent herniation or whatever. But they got a lot of muscle as well. Yeah.
Would a high performing athlete, we talked about like loads or percentage of body fat to weight or to muscle mass, would a high performing athlete have a harder time at insulation and body heat?
Well, someone with low body fat is definitely going to have less insulation. But a person a high-performing athlete is probably also going to have a higher metabolism, so their basal metabolic rate is going to be a little bit higher, and because of that, they're probably going to be burning more calories and have a generally higher baseline temperature. So maybe those, yeah, I mean, I don't know actually, but that's those two facts that I said are true. All right, should we move on? We got everything out of this. Oh, one other thing, adipose tissue is also, most people don't realize this, but it produces hormones. It is hormonal. It produces leptin and ghrelin. Did I have that in there? No, this book, this is a slide from the book. Does it say that? Yeah. But it produces hormones that are related to your sense of satiety, so being full and like hunger. It produces hormones that the brain responds to. All right. Adipose tissue. All right. So we're moving on from loose connective tissue. So those are loose connective tissue, meaning they can stretch areolar tissue. Fat is very loosely organized. It's not really like tough, densely packed. It's pretty loosely organized. And we're moving into a new category of connective tissue called dense connective tissue. And there's another term here, dense regular connective tissue. So if I said regular, what does that imply? What did I say earlier? There's an irregular as well. We're not going to talk about it. It's still important, but I probably don't need it to teach this class. If it comes up, then I'll talk about it then. I don't think I will talk about it. Anyways, dense regular connective tissue, I'll be talking about a lot. Absolutely. We're going to probably spend a couple weeks talking about things related to that. Dense regular connective tissue is basically tendon and ligaments fall into this category. So tendons are the connective tissue that attach muscle to bone, and ligaments are the connective tissue that attaches bone to bone. All right? So dense regular connective tissue. Let's think about it. Dense means just what it says. It's densely packed together. Regular, what does that mean? Regular or unleaded? No, that's not what that means. Regular means it's in a regular array. These fibers are all going in the same direction. There's a regular pattern to it, is what that term means. Irregular connective tissue is not. The fibers are going all over the place. It doesn't seem like there's a rhyme or a reason to it. Okay? Yes, ma'am. Yeah. It's around all your joints. All your joints. Any tendon that's got some dense regular connective tissue in it. And I don't remember exactly what's on the list there, but I can imagine the two things that I want you to look at are be able to identify the collagen fibers. So when you look at that stuff, you guys got it on the deck there? Yeah, switch over to dense regular if you haven't. And it may not say dense regular, it may just say tendon. Yeah, with the tendon up there. So at some point, I'm actually going to start talking about science in the lecture, and it's a science class. And when I do that, I'm going to talk about something called the structure-function paradigm. I'll tell you about an interesting guy named Louis Sullivan, who was an architect, and this idea of structure-function paradigm. But the idea is that the function of something is related to its structure. What the structure it has is what gives rise to the function. So this is why we're looking at the microscopic structure of this tissue, because we can begin to see how it functions, all right, from its structure. So these fibers that you see all parallel and lined up, Those are collagen fibers. Now, what did I say about collagen? Strong, strong along the length. It's basically a giant protein rope. So there's these long tapestry of collagen fibers that run along the length that that tendon or ligament is going to experience force. Better if I stand over here, out of the way of the rain. The other thing that you'll be able to see, yes, ma'am. Let's see. Oh, that is because this is a super old kind of fat slide, and that was broken glass. That was not actually. So right here. Yeah, centered right on some tendon. That's actually not a very good slide. That's a slide. What happened there is somebody did what I said. They pushed down on the thing and it like cracked along all the edges. So that black and white pattern was the cracked glass. That's what happens. It wasn't like so gone. Yes, ma'am. So on some of your slides, you'll see if you look at the title, it'll say CS, LS. CS is cross section, LS is longitudinal. This is a longitudinal section, so you can see along the fiber path. The CS is across the fiber path. It'll look totally different. It'll look like little dots, but it's just because they're like all these little fibers in a bundle. So it'd be like taking a rope and cutting it across and looking at it versus along its length. So this is a longitudinal section. The only other thing to notice here are the fiber site nuclei. Okay, so there's going to be fiber sites here. Now, I told you there's 200 different cell types, right? I told you there's 200 different cell types. The fiber site that's in a tendon is not the same fiber site as you're going to find in areolar tissue, right? The word fiber site is a general term in and of itself. Like different specific tissue organ systems are going to have a type of fiber site that's going to make the connective tissue in that structure. All right? But we're using the general term. These are a type of fiber site that are making the collagen fiber. It's a fiber site because it makes collagen. And it's making dense regular stuff. Is there anything else on that under dense regular CT? That's it? Okay. Any other questions before I move on? Okay. Next, hyoid cartilage. So we've done 3. I'm going for the 4th. So now we're moving on to a different category of connective tissue. It's called the next 3 slides, and there's only 3 left. All 3 of them are types of what are called supportive connective tissue. Supportive connective tissue. And hyoid cartilage is one of them. It's called hyoid cartilage because it has this stuff called hyaluronic acid. Don't worry about that word. We're going to talk about that in lecture. I was making the slides for that today. You'll see it in a few weeks from now. But hyoid cartilage is the cartilage that makes up what is called articular cartilage. Most of the cartilage in the body is hyoid cartilage. Articular cartilage is where one bone meets with another bone and articulates with it. The word articulate, to be an articulate person, means you are connecting the thought that's in your head with the tongue that's in your mouth. You can take a sophisticated thought and make it connect to your tongue. So to be articulate is that connection. All right? For bones to articulate, they are connecting with one another. All right? And that connection is mediated by articular cartilage. Articular cartilage is made up of hyoid cartilage. You guys got it on your scopes there? So this stuff is fairly stiff, but also flexible, and helps to protect the surface of a joint, okay? The surface of a bone. If you look at it, so what you see in this stuff is a lot of empty space, it looks like, or it's shaded, it's colored space, hard to really make out much in it. That is called matrix. There are no cells there. There are no cells. That's the matrix. Not like Keanu Reeves matrix. It's made up of very, very fine, a type of collagen. So I say this, your body makes many types of collagen. There, I don't know, at least a dozen collagen genes. Different types of collagen. This is a very fine, like spider webby, but still strong collagen. And it gives the hyaline cartilage a particularly beautiful appearance under the microscope. So there's this matrix. The matrix itself is made by these chondrocytes. The prefix chondro, C-H-O-N-D-R-O, chondro, is the prefix that refers to cartilage. It's the prefix that refers to cartilage. So chondrosis is like an inflammation of the cartilage. Chondrocyte is a cartilage cell. It lives in these little bubbles. There are these bubbles in the matrix of the cartilage. Those bubbles are called lacunae. Now, lacunae is a medical term, an anatomical term, but it's also, it's a great SAT word, or maybe GRE word when you get to that point. SAT is long behind you. A lacunae is just a pocket, a void space in something. It's another word for like a void space. So they live in these little bubbles, these void spaces called lacuna, and they make the matrix, these chondrocytes. Is there anything else on that list? Probably should have put parachondrium.
Yeah, that is.
Oh, it is? Okay, good. So, let's see, do I have a picture? A good picture for that? I don't have a good picture of it here, but you'll see some pictures of it in lecture anyways. Perichondrium. So peri, the prefix peri, just means on the outside of, or near, next to, on the surface of. A periscope is a scope that goes on the surface of the water. Like a microscope or a telescope. A periscope is something that comes up onto the surface of the water. So perichondrium is this layer that lives on the surface of the cartilage. It's part of the cartilage. But if you can think of it as like the nursery for the chondrocytes. In fact, chondroblasts live in the perichondrium. They're like sort of stem cell, cartilage stem cells. Chondroblasts are this perichondrium. And then they develop and they push in and they grow new matrix, and we'll talk about it in the lecture as we learn what cartilage does and how it works. It's important to understand here, the thing that I want you to get from this is really notice the structure of the cartilage. What does it remind you of? What does it remind you of? Can anybody physically describe, what does that, if you were to think of some other material, what does it sort of look like? So knowing what it is, right? It's got this solid stuff with all these little holes, these bubbles in it, these void spaces. It looks to me a little bit like a sponge. It looks a little bit like a sponge. And with, so there's the solid stuff and there's holes in it. what can you do with the sponge? You can squeeze it. You can compress it. It's absorptive. Both of those things. That's right. That's right. That is intrinsic to the function of cartilage. It's super important when we talk about how cartilage functions on the ends of our bones and how yoga affects that cartilage. In terms of healthy cartilage, what it means to keep cartilage healthy, what it needs, and how yoga affects that. We have to understand the structure of cartilage. So this is why we're looking at it. Okay? Next. Fibrocartilage. There's other types of cartilage, but these are the only two we're going to talk about. There's elastic cartilage, which is the stuff that makes in your ears, makes your ears go like this. They're kind of stiff, but they're really stringy. Different than hyaline cartilage. The ribs, your ribs, on the bottom of your ribs, right here, I talked about hypochondriacs, right? And the cartilage, the costal cartilage. This is hyaline cartilage. Feel that stuff. It's kind of soft, but it's not springy like this, is it? No, that was the hyaline cartilage. Fibrocartilage is even further away from this. It's tougher than hyaline cartilage. So fibrocartilage has these little strings of chondrocytes that are found in the lacuna. So those terms are the same. But its matrix looks a lot stringier than hyaline cartilage, and there's a directionality to it. This stuff is strong and tough. Very strong collagen, larger type of collagen exists in this fibrocartilage. We find this in the discs of our vertebra, because those discs go through a lot of punishment. They take a lot of punishment. We're going to talk about discs when we talk about a bunch of things. We'll talk like the spine is really central to a lot of yoga, so we'll spend quite a bit of time talking about the discs. But it's also in the pubic symphysis. The pubic, If you look at a pelvis, there should be some pelvises on the deck in front of you. There's one, I don't know where it is. Maybe it's over here. You got it, yeah. And then all of these guys. If you look, the pelvis is actually two bones. And right in the front where they join, there's a piece of cartilage called the pubic symphysis. A symphysis is something where two bones actually join. It's not a movable joint. Although the pubic symphysis can relax at certain points, notably during childbirth. All right, so during childbirth, the SI joint and the pubic symphysis sort of release. Get that baby out of there. Also, for people who have to go through a radical prostatectomy, men who have to have their prostate removed, the pubic symphysis is cut so the pelvis can be spread apart. Yeah, it's not how you want to freak yourself out. YouTube prostate surgery. Be glad you don't have one. But they separate along the pubic symphysis. So it can be separated and will heal. All right, fibrocartilage. Any other questions, comments on fibrocartilage? Now, the last one. The last one. Dense bone. Dense bone. I am going to show you later on, when we get to muscles, I am going to go through, we'll look at a muscle cell as well. But I'm not doing that today. It's all connective tissue today. This is a close-up of dense bone. And bone, the other thing I wanted you to notice with the cartilage is something that's not on there. There are no blood vessels. It wasn't on the list because there are no blood vessels in cartilage. That's important. It's a very important feature, something that's missing from cartilage. It doesn't have bone. We'll talk about it in lecture. All right, okay, it's missing a cartilage. Bone, on the other hand, is say dry as bone. Couldn't be a worse description of bone. Bone is not dry. In contrast to cartilage, it has a zillion little capillaries in it. It's totally full of blood. Its structure is made up of these things called ostia. And I'll go through these models in a little bit. Here is a cross-section of dense bone zoomed in. And you can see in this, there's a couple of these, there's another one over there somewhere. You can see these little cross-sections, they look like the cross-section of a tree. That's called an osteon. I zoomed in on one of them. In the center is this dark area. We call that the central canal. That's where the big arteriole and venule that is servicing that osteon flows. All right? It's like the central pipe that's got the blood. And then there are these rings that come out from it. All of the light material that you see here is matrix. But the matrix of bone is different than the matrix of cartilage. It's calcified. It's hard. It's hard. It's been calcified. This stuff called hydroxyapatite. We'll look at that in lecture. But it's hard. The actual bone cells, or osteocytes, osteo meaning bone, like an osteopath is a person that thinks that your pathology or what's wrong with you can be treated by manipulating your bones. Like anyone ever done see an osteopath and they give you a little back crack or something? Yeah, Maine's got a lot of osteopaths. It's got one of the biggest osteopathic schools in New England. But osteocyte is a bone cell. There are osteoblasts. We'll talk about osteoblasts when I talk about bones in lecture and how stimulating osteoblasts with yoga leads to healthy bones. But the osteocytes live in their own lacunae. There's a lacuna for each osteocyte, a little hollow space between these rings of dense matrix. And that's what these little black smears are right there. Those are the osteocytes in the lacuna. Do I have canaliculi on there? Okay. Canaliculi are coming off of any of these osteocytes are these little, you'll see these spidery, fine hair-like looking things. Those are super tiny canals. It's like the Latin diminutive of the word canal would be canaliculi. Right? So it's a Latin term. This means teeny tiny canal. And how do you remember it? Canaliculi. I don't know. It's like a phrase. Canaliculi. That's how you say it. Anything else here? I want to say? I don't think so. Concentric lamella. Yeah. So these layers that I was referring to are actually called concentric lamella. And they're these lamella just means layer. A lamella is a layer. So like a laminate on your countertops, it's just a layer that's been put on top of formica or whatever. Mica layer. Concentric because they're all concentric to the central canal. Centric circle like a bullseye. So concentric lamella with lacuna in between them and the osteocytes. This is dense bone. So here's a cartoon. Do I have periosteum on the list there? No. Okay, so that's not in the slide. We will talk about periosteum in a bit because I do need to know. You need to know periosteum. Because periosteum is how tendons attach to the bone. Tendons attach to the bone via the periosteum. So peri, just like periscope on the surface of the water, periosteum is on the surface of the bone. It's this layer on the surface of the bone and there's two parts to periosteum. There's a fibrous layer. It's just a bunch of collagen connective tissue. And then there's a cellular layer where the osteoblasts and osteocytes are. It's like a nursery for that. Right? So that's the periosteum. And the tendon, the fibers of the tendon grow right into the fibrous layer of the periosteum. That's how the tendon attaches to a bone. Right? So we'll see that in lecture. Here's the cartoon. We see the vessels inside the central canal. We see the concentric lamellae. We see the canaliculi. The canaliculi are how the osteocytes send out tiny little arms into the canaliculi and connect with the blood that comes out through tiny little arterioles that go through the matrix. So all of those canaliculi are totally filled with blood. Bone equals blood, lots of blood. We'll talk about what that means in lecture. There's a significance to this about how bone and cartilage respond differently to physical activity. All right, here's this model. There's two of them. There should be two of them. Maybe I only have one now. So there's one here for sure. Okay, it's simple now. Anyways, we see here the periosteum with the fibrous layer, the cellular layer. We see an osteon, which is one of these round areas organized around the central canal. They depict the osteocytes in the lacuna. So these empty spots are representing lacuna. The little bumps on that model represent the osteocytes. And then they're painted dark here to represent the fact there's blood in there too. So all of the osteocytes are just bathing in it. They're just bathing in the blood, which is great because they get all the nutrients they need. They get all the oxygen they need. See the concentric lamella, they sort of pull an osteon out. So you can, it's just showing the crossing fiber pattern in the concentric lamella. Oops. Okay. Is there anything else? I think that's pretty good. Is trabeculae on the list there? No, it's not. Yeah. So side view, let's keep moving. Here's a zoomed out view, probably similar to what you've been seeing in your scopes on the bone. Is everybody, the bone working for everybody? No? Oh, you need some help? You just wave at me. Just smile at me. Oh, she's like, oh, okay. Y'all good though? Yeah, okay. Dude, there's some smell in here. It's getting me now. I smell like some fat. Chem labs. Once we get past this anatomy, we'll be going into some other spaces. Good. All right. Got to keep it fast enough to keep you awake, though. I don't want people going to sleep. Who's sleeping? Anyone? All right. Okay, so that's the histology. And let's do the bones. Okay. So the next is the skeleton. And I'm going to go through the skeleton a little bit with you. And we're not going to learn the names of all the bones, because we don't need to know the name and the shape of the sphenoid bone. It's an amazing bone, but if you really get inspired, you can take my Jan plan. We'll go through the sphenoid bone. What is my, you probably don't know.
No, what is your
The sphenoid bone, I'll show it to you if you want. It's a weird, It's a weird bone. It's a pretty amazing bone. Okay, so the body, I already said this, the body can be divided. Did I say this? Sometimes I get confused because I've been teaching A and B at high school. Did I talk about the axial and the appendicular skeleton? It did, good. Right. It's divided into the axis of the body, the central axis, and your appendages. So the axial and the appendicular body. So we're going to go through the axial skeleton first. This is it, the axial skeleton. It's the skull, the vertebral column, the ribs, sternum, and the sacrum, and the coccyx. Okay? That's the axial skeleton. We'll go through it in a little bit of detail, not too much. All right, first the skull. There are a bunch of bones in the skull. The skull itself is broken up into the cranium or brain case. Brain case, those are all bones that come in contact with the brain somehow. And then there's the face, or the facial bones. And these are bones in the skull that do not come in contact with the brain. In animals, we call this the rostrum, like the snout of an animal, but humans have faces. The sphenoid bone is this bone right here. You wanted to know. It's like the shape of a bat if you actually look at it. It's a super crazy bone if you look at it in isolation. Bats. You don't need to know the sphenoid bone. Don't worry about it. Just, she asked about it. Oh, it's not that scary. Oh. Stolen. Bad news, man. Bad news. I don't know. Sphenoid bone is a pretty amazing bone. I'm not surprised.
Is there only one or no?
There's only one of them. Yeah, there's only one. Down here in the ribs. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. That sucks. Okay. Anyways, put this back.
So, whenever there's a broken nose, you break the nasal bone, but do we call it break the cartilage here?
You can break a broken nose can mean a number of different things. A broken nose can mean a broken nasal bone. It can mean a broken vomer. You can't see the vomer or anything. I wasn't going to go through the skull more than just to point it out, but let's see. It can mean a broken vomer. It can mean a broken nasal concha.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff here. Don't get freaked out by the skull. We're not going to learn it all. I'll say this. There is as much or probably more anatomy from the neck up than there is from the neck down. The skull is super complex. It's super complex. It's incredibly beautiful, but let's go back. All right, so here we go. A couple things. The occipital bone is important. We'll talk about the occipital bone because the occipital bone is the bone that comes in contact with the vertebral column. All right, the spine comes in contact. So that's why that it's important to us. Occiput or occiput are other terms you'll hear. Annie used the word occiput the other day in lab, but it's just the occipital bone. The word OCC, what other word has that word in it? Those letters in it. Huh? Ocular. What other word? Occupy. That's right. The word I was looking for was occlude. To occlude. What is the word occlude? What does an occlusion mean? if your view is occluded, it means you can't see something. So the occipital bone is the bone that is farthest away from your sight. It's the farthest away from your sight. It's the bone that you cannot see. Not that you can see your sphenoid or something, but it's the furthest away from your sight. And in fact, your brain that's underneath it, it has these different lobes. You've probably heard of that. The occipital lobe of your brain is your visual cortex. That's the part of the brain that sees. Okay, so that's an irony, anatomical irony. Occipital bone. Let's see if we can have a better picture. Yeah, not so amazing here. Nothing. I don't think there's anything I need to go through here. Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so either. I don't have any of this stuff on there, right? It just says skull. I think. Yeah, I just put skull on there. Okay, so this is the view that I want. This hole right here, you've heard like, oh, you've got a hole in your head or something like that. Well, in fact, you do. We all do. It's a desirable hole. It's called the foramen magnum. The word foramen just means a hole. It means a hole. That's all. The word foramen is an anatomical term that means a hole in something. And the word magnum, P-I, magnum just means large. So it's a large hole in your head. Does anyone want to venture a guess pretty easily? Guess? Yeah, that's where your spinal cord emerges from the brain. All right. So on either side of this foramen magnum, there are these things called the occipital condyles. I should have put this on the list. I didn't put it on the list. We will talk about this in lecture at least. The occipital condyles are, a condyle in general is a type of articular surface where two bones are going to articulate with one another. And a condyle, it looks like chondro a little bit, doesn't it? Without the H. It's related. It just means a condyle is a surface covered in cartilage. All right? So the occipital condyles, there's two of them on either side. That's where your vertebral column rests. The skull rests, right? On the occipital condyles on the first vertebra. So that's all of the skull that I think we really need. The hyoid bone is kind of an interesting bone. You'll see the hyoid bone floating here. On this one, you can feel your own hyoid bone. It's right in the exact notch of your throat. You go up in there and you'll feel this hard thing. You can move it side to side. It feels sort of weird. That's your hyoid bone. The hyoid bone is important because it attaches to this muscular sling that keeps our throat up here. If we didn't have a hyoid bone, we'd all look like Newt Gingrich. That'd be horrible. Your whole throat would be kind of like down here like this. So the hyoid bone sucks it all up into the cleft of your throat. It's a point of attachment for a lot of muscles. We will talk about it. It plays significantly in shoulder stand, in yoga, when you're doing shoulder stand, the hyoid bone, and the pressure that it puts on the, has anyone done shoulder stand before? Shoulder stand is the one where it's like you're doing a headstand, but you're not on your head, you're on your shoulders. Candlestick, sure. Never heard that one. Yeah. Yeah. The hyoid bone puts pressure on the thyroid through the thyroid cartilage and cuts off blood supply to the thyroid. When you come out of it and hopefully do fish pose, you're supposed to have the contrary fish pose to like reperfuse the tissue. But the hyoid plays into that pose. All right, on to the vertebral vertebral column. Vertebral column. Here's a vertebrae. And there are 3 types named for the 3 regions along the spinal column. There's the cervicis or cervical region. Remember I talked about that. There's that's the neck. There's the thorax or the thoracic region. There's going to be some thoracic vertebra, and then the lumbus or loin, your lumbar low back region. So those are 3 types of vertebra. This one that we're looking at is actually a thoracic vertebra, but that doesn't matter. You can just look at the general parts of a vertebra here. There is a body to the vertebrae, and that's the part that is going to come in contact with the disc and the vertebra above or below it. And then there's this vertebral foramen. Foramen is a hole. That's where your spinal cord passes. And then there are these articular facets. So articular is where 2 bones articulate. Facet just means a face or a surface. And then there are these processes. There's a spinous process and a transverse process. And these are important because this is where muscles attach. You can feel, when you feel along your back, the repeating bumps that you feel, that's your spinous process. All right? That's why they call it the spine. The spiny ridges of your spine are the spinous processes that run down the vertebral column. Transverse processes are buried beneath those 2 ropes of muscle that you feel on either side of the spinous processes. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail later. So that's a vertebra. Here's another picture of it. You'll have the vertebral body, the vertebral foramen where the spine goes, the spinous process, the transverse process. This is where muscles attach. This is anterior. This is posterior. So this is a lateral view. Okay. So here's putting a few of them together. Now we've transected part of it away, and we can see here the center of one of these intervertebral discs. Intervertebral discs. I probably should have put, I don't remember what's on there, I probably should have put some of this terminology. The stuff I'm talking about is important insofar as I'm definitely going to be mentioning it in lecture. So, in the center of one of these discs is this thing called the nucleus pulposus. I'll talk about it in lecture, but the nucleus pulposus is like I'm not wearing my Asics, but you ever had those like gel shoes, right? It's like that. It's a little gel center that's surrounded by all these annula or rings of fibrocartilage that keep it packed in there. Right? We'll talk about how the discs work, the spine works. I think that's all here. Any questions? You following me? Okay. So, yeah.
What are the 3 types of?
We're going to do it again. So this is a cervical vertebra. I know it's a cervical vertebra because it has this thing called a transverse foramen. This is where your vertebral artery passes up into the skull. A third of the blood that gets into your skull comes through the vertebral artery that goes there. I'm not going to expect you to be able to distinguish or differentiate between thoracic and a cervical vertebra. Although it's not that hard, just look at these extra holes there. And then lumbar vertebra are really distinct. All right, so this is a superior view of a cervical vertebra. And we see the vertebral body, the foramen, the spinous process. The transverse process is specialized here because it has this bony structure that's protecting the vertebral artery. This is a bit of a morbid factoid, but when a person is hung by the neck when they used to hang people, it is actually the interruption of the vertebral artery that is one of part of the anatomy of that. So there's quite a bit of blood supply that passes through that canal there. All right. There are, however, two vertebrae that I want to talk about. There are two that I want to talk about that are important. And they're easy because they're number one and number two. They're the first and second vertebra of your vertebral column. The very first one is called the atlas. Well, that's cool. What is the word atlas mean? Yeah.
It's the Greek or Titan who held up the world on the back of his shoulder.
That's great. Sometimes people tell me a book of maps, but yes, please, thank you. That was the answer I was looking for. He was the Greek Titan. Did everyone hear that? Who carried the weight of the world on his back. And so if we imagine, to get a skeleton that's got a skull. If we imagine this as the world, the atlas is holding the weight of the world. All right? So it has these articular facets right here come in contact with what? Can anybody guess? I've already told you the answer today. What was that called? Let's say it together. Occipital condyle. Occipital condyle. Occipital condyle. Comes in touch with the atlas right there. The next one down, we call it the axis. What is an axis? Don't tell me about World War II. Yeah, it's a point of rotation. It's a point of rotation. So when you turn your head like this, all of the vertebrae are doing this, but a lot of that rotation is happening at the joint between the atlas and the axis. Right? The axis has one feature that no other bone in your vertebral column has. It's called the dens. It's a bony spike that sticks up off of it. You can see it in place right here. You can go to some of these things. See that bony spike and how the axis really rotates right around the dens? The dens is the axis of that rotation in the axis. All right? The word dens, what does that remind you of? That word. Say it. Dens. Dens. Yeah, dens. What is dens? Dens. Dentist. Dental. Yeah, that's it. You got it. You got it. Yeah, dens means tooth. Means tooth. It's a little tooth that's sticking up off the top of the axis around which you get some rotation there. Right? So I'm telling you this because I imagine I'm probably going to be referencing this a little bit when we talk about some twists. Okay. Here's a lumbar vertebra. I can tell because huge transverse processes, big vertebral body, supporting all of that weight. Oh no, thoracic. I'm totally full of it. Let me. Yeah, look at that. So it's thrown off. Little vertebral body in the cervical one, bigger in the thoracic. I spoke too soon. Lumbar is huge. I admit my mistakes. Yeah, the lumbar vertebral body is much larger because it's supporting quite a bit more weight. Large spinous and transverse processes because there's large muscles in the low back that are attached to them. On to the sacrum. So, in an old fart like me, the sacrum is one fused bone. In like burgeoning old farts like you, the sacrum is beginning to fuse. Throughout your 20s, that happens. Yes, ma'am.
So the first important vertebrae was that
Atlas? Axis. Yeah, yeah. And we'll talk a little bit more about how many sacrum bones there are, how they fuse, and all that in lecture. But in your 20s, those separate sacral bones that are joined by cartilage, that cartilage ossifies and becomes a single bone. At the bottom of it is the coccyx bones, and there are 4 of them, which also fuse with time. Also fuse.
Is there a reason that they fuse besides evolutionarily?
Well, it helps as they fuse. It stabilizes that bone. You know, as your musculature develops and your body stops growing, it doesn't need to be flexible and responsive to the needs of growing, adding musculature. You know, by the time you're in your late 20s, you're pretty much who you are. Okay, so yeah, it calcifies, stabilizes. I think evolutionarily, I mean, women are fertile usually in their 50s, but I think most, like early on, life expectancy was 30s or whatever. So most women had the majority of their children that they were going to bear by the time they had reached 30 or something like that. That's changing now, of course, but so that like flexibility in the sacro-pelvic region is probably not as important. Yeah, I mean, I think you probably would have had, say, 10,000 years ago, you would have had your first kid by the time you were 30, that you were going to have children. So, and then once that happens, once you go through that process, that pelvic architecture models subsequent pregnancies are a little bit easier. All right. So here are some terms that Annie used in class the other day. I'm showing you what they are. I'm going to define them for you. The words lordosis and kyphosis. Lordosis is a concave, anterior concavity of the spine. Lordosis is anterior concavity. Kyphosis is posterior convexity. All right? So anterior concavity, posterior convexity. So there's a cervical lordosis, thoracic kyphosis, lumbar kyphosis, and no. I have my, that's, that should be, cut and paste error there. That should be lordosis. It should be a lumbar lordosis. I'll fix that, sorry. And made this slide scratch. And then there's the sacral kyphosis again. So the posterior convex. So there's these curvatures, natural curvatures to the spine. There's 4 of them. Lordosis and kyphosis are natural curvatures to the spine. They can become pathologic if they become too accentuated and the weight balance is thrown off. All right? So you've seen people with osteoporosis become what's called kyphotic. They're talking about thoracic kyphosis. That's this kind of thing. Doesn't even feel good when you do it. Yeah.
My friend just had to have surgery for kyphosis that she had. So now she gets to go. She can't move around. She has to stay like this the whole entire time. Sleep like that.
Yeah. Spine is difficult. You've heard, yes.
I have a question. Okay, so there are different, what's the thing where your spine curves?
So if there is rotation of one vertebra to the next on the facets, that happens because there's some sort of imbalance in the body. Who knows why? Maybe the person's leg is shorter on one side than the other, and they have a twisting that, and they're accommodating for it. And with time, the muscles have asymmetry to them. And bone is, we'll talk about this when I talk about the physiology of bone, but bone remodels every year. Some of the bone remodels. And so you can change the shape of bone with time. So if you have some sort of maybe posterior or some other anomaly, musculoskeletal anomaly that's throwing off the symmetry, the architecture of your body, with time it can change those orientations because the muscle is pulling on the bone in the wrong sort of way, and it's going to sculpt that bone to match the tensions from the muscles that are attached to it. Does that answer your question? Yeah. I'm just going to do this while I'm thinking of it.
Is the sacral kyphosis?
Yeah. Say it again.
Is it sacral kyphosis on the bottom?
Yep, absolutely. So I also have listed the number of vertebrae. There's 7 cervical, 12 thoracic, and 5 lumbar vertebra for a total of 24. And then there's 5 sacrum and 4 occipital bones. So that's the spine. The vertebral column. Important. It's important. Let's move to the anterior side. Any other questions? Don't promise to have answers to all of them, but I'll give you my best shot. And when I don't know, I'll say. All right, so the 12 thoracic vertebra, each are defined by an attachment to a rib. One of the ribs is attached to each of them. And it comes around and then one way or the other attaches to this anchor in the front, which we typically call the sternum. The sternum itself has 3 parts. Early anatomists, when they were looking at the sternum, thought it looked like a dagger. And so they named it such. This part of the sternum is called the manubrium. M-A-N-U is like reminiscent of the word manual, isn't it? Meaning hand. A manual is something that you look through with your hands, or manual labor with your hands. So they thought that this was the handle to the dagger, the manubrium. And then there's the body and the xiphoid process. I may be wrong. This may be BS, but I think xiphoid means blade or point. I have to look that one up. Anyways, all of the ribs attach either directly or through these cartilages, these costal cartilages. And the ribs themselves are broken up. The first 7 of them are called true ribs because they have their own individual cartilages that come up and attach directly to the sternum. And then the last 5 of them they're called false ribs because their cartilage comes and attaches to the cartilage of the one below it. Right? It doesn't actually directly attach. False ribs. There's a couple of these so-called floating ribs in the back that don't really attach to anything. They're the ones that feel really weird. If you go around the back of your rib cage and you press on them, you can really move them around quite a bit, like way back in there. Yeah, it feels weird. Those floating, those break easy. You get hit right on those Okay, thoracic cage. The clavicle. Is anybody like Latin music? In Latin music, you hear that sound, the tuk, 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 tuk. Those are called the claves. What does that word mean? Key. Good work. Yeah. Who said that? You too. Yeah. Thank you. Right on. Nice. Yeah. So the clavicle is so named because the Romans used to use the clavicle. They would carve them, into the first keys. They would take clavicles and carve them into keys. The first keys were made out of clavicles. It's a weird thing, but maybe it'll help you remember it. The clavicle is part of the shoulder girdle. So we look over here, and we see that it attaches to the manubrium of the sternum, that handle, and then also to the shoulder blade. This part of the scapula, it's called the scapula, we'll get to it, but to this part of the scapula that's called the acromion, and we'll see that in a minute, don't sweat it yet. But the the clavicle has a sternal end and an acromial end. The acromial end is the most significant because this it's called the AC joint. Has anybody heard of the AC joint? Oftentimes, rugby players and football players have heard of it. What context have you heard of the AC joint?
Well, my dad's a doctor, so
Yeah, who's heard?
I've heard mine in hockey.
Hockey, yeah. Okay, good way to heard it. Yeah, so trying to be a tough guy or girl and chucking your shoulder into something and bust open the door. It's a great way to mess up your AC joint. Don't do that. You get dropped shoulder. And you can tie your shoes without bending over down. It's not that bad, but you don't want to separate your AC joint. You don't want to separate that. It's the joint between the clavicle and the acromion of this. And that AC joint, we'll talk about that when we talk about some of the motions that our shoulder is able to do. That AC joint is important. All right, on to the scapula. So this is so-called shoulder blade, right? The scapula. And the scapula's got a couple of important things. Now, the thing you'll notice about the shoulder joint, and we'll talk about the shoulder joint more later, is that it's not actually a really sturdy connection between the arm and the shoulder blade. It's actually kind of a weak connection. But that's what gives us all this range of motion. There's no other joint in your body that can do all this, right? So it's supported by muscle, and there has to be things that the muscle attaches to. And the scapula, the weird bone that it is, provides those muscular attachment points. Right? So we're going to have to learn a little bit about the scapula, because we're going to talk about the shoulder joint. There's the body, which is obvious, it's the big part of the scapula. And then there's these other things. There's the acromion, and acromion is Latin for crow's beak, the beak of a crow. And if you look at where somebody's scapula over here somewhere, you got one right there. If you really look at that, you can sort of see, yep, the acromion's the tall one. You can feel your own acromion if you go to your shoulder and the most lateral point, that point of the shoulder, go all the way lateral, not way in the back, lateral. You feel that, mine's right here. That acromion, I can feel it right here, the bony part of your shoulder. That's the acromion. It's the crow's beak. Deep to the acromion is this thing called Coracoid Process. And the Coracoid Process is hiding beneath the anterior leaf of your deltoid muscles. You can feel it, you can kind of dig into it. It feels a little weird. If you dig through the front of the deltoid, you can come in and feel that Coracoid Process. It's this right here. All right? So the acromion, the Coracoid Process, is ma'am. There's all kinds of ligaments, yeah. We'll get to that when we talk about the joint. Just be patient. There's a ligament that attaches the acromion to the coracoid process. There's a ligament that attaches the clavicle to the coracoid process. There's ligaments that attach the acromion to the clavicle. It's all tied together. So there's those two things. There are two other features that you need to look at, but we got to get a different view. This is anterior, right clavicle, anterior view. So let's see if we can get a lateral view. Here's a lateral view of the same right scapula. There's this thing called the glenoid cavity. The glenoid cavity, and that's right where the head of your humerus or arm bone is going to articulate, right in there. Okay? When you disjoint people, has anyone done that? It's painful. Oh my God. Sorry. It's horrible. Yeah, but you survive. You're here. Is it okay? No, it's bad. Yeah, it's bad. I've never done it, but I've seen it. Thank God. But this is what happens. The arm bone comes right off of that, comes out of alignment there. We're going to look at that more closely. So the glenoid cavity is the other feature that we need to know. And then you can see it here, sort of. This thing called the scapular spine. So the acromion is a projection off of that spine. And you can see the acromion coming up here. It's crow's feet. But there's the scapular spine. So if you take your arm and you reach all the way back on your shoulder, you'll feel that bony ridge. Like if you go from the acromion and you work your way along it backwards, you'll feel that bony line. That is your scapular spine. There's a muscle above it called the supraspinatus and a muscle below it called the infraspinatus, and spinatus referring to the spine. It was a part of the rotator cuff. We're going to talk about that when we look at the joint on the shoulder. So excited. I've never gotten to go into like the details of the joints before at Colby. Did it before I come to school, or nursing school, but I never do it here. So here's a posterior view. And we see the scapular spine, so your hand was on the acromion and you work your way back onto the spine there. This fossa, the word fossa, is just another word for kind of like a cavity or a space, like a cove. Fossa is like a depression in something. So the infraspinatus fossa, and this would be the supraspinous fossa. It's where there's going to be muscles that live there, etc. The only other thing would be the spinous notch, but I don't think you need to go there. That's the nerve. Any other questions? Scapula. All right, the humerus. Nothing funny about the humerus. It's got a head. It's got a shaft. There's the end of it. What's on the list? Thanks. Yeah, I'm not sure what I want to pull it to. Yeah, okay, yeah. So the head, the electrodon, and the condyles. All right. So, the electrodon fossa, we have to look at the posterior surface. The electrodon fossa is the area, we'll get to it in a minute. But one thing that we'll need to talk about are these epicondyles. So right here, this capitulum and trochlea, which I didn't put on your on the list because I'm probably not actually going to talk about them. These are the condyles. These are the condyles. What did I say a condyle was? I was talking about the occipital condyle. Yeah, it's a bony surface that has a cartilage on top of it where we have an articulation between bones. So these are condyles here, specifically named the capitulum and trochlea, which you don't have to But the epicondyle is just next to it. It's beside it. It's epi or beside the condyles. So there's the medial epicondyle and the lateral epicondyle. It's these two bony projections on either side of your elbow that you can feel when you put your hands on either side. The medial and lateral epicondyle. We're going to need those because I'm going to use them as reference points next week when we do the goniometry. Right? I'm going to refer to these points for you. So let's go see the olecranon fossa. Okay, so here, this is still anterior. This is the joint. You can see the whole joint. Here's the medial epicondyle, the humerus. This is the trochlea, the capitulum, the condyles. And it articulates with the radius and the ulna. So these two bones, the radius and the ulna. We'll go through that joint in more detail later. Yes, ma'am.
What happens when you hit like your funny bone, so to say? Like, you get like a tingling.
Totally, yeah. So there is a nerve called the radial nerve that runs down and goes over that medial epicondyle. It goes right over that medial epicondyle. And if you accidentally bump the epicondyle, the medial epicondyle, and catch that nerve between the bone and whatever you're hitting, it'll like shock that nerve. And it's like, we've all probably done it. Everybody's done it. It's not fun. It sucks. Yeah, it sucks. That's the feeling of smashing a nerve. Yeah. The funny bone. Yeah, for people with bad sense of humor. All right. Here's the posterior view. And on the back, there's this thing called the olecranon fossa. So if we bend our elbow, and so the point of the elbow, and then work proximal to that, so work up the arm, you'll feel a soft spot in there. And you can press into it pretty deep. That's the olecranon fossa. And as you go, as you unbend the elbow, you'll notice that the point of your elbow, which is called the olecranon, is going to displace your finger. All right, so I'm up in the olecranon fossa now, and then I extend the hand, and I push my finger out of that olecranon fossa. The olecranon has gone into it, and we'll see what that means. It's basically a hook on the ulna called the olecranon that locks that bone in place with the humerus, so you can have it's real stable and it doesn't like wobble side to side. All right, so here we see it. Here's the back of the elbow joint. Here's the olecranon fossa, and this part of the ulna bone it's called the olecranon. It's like curved up and locked into place with that when the arm is extended. Yeah, so we see medial epicondyle, lateral epicondyle. So this must be a right arm. If this is medial and we're at a posterior view, we know that's superior. This must be a right elbow. Medial is this way, lateral that way. We're looking at the back. It's got to be the right side. This over here, medial would be on this side. Yes, ma'am.
If you're hyperflexible at your elbows, is that due to the joint itself or due to the muscle?
Hyperflexibility can be a couple things. In your elbow, if you have one of those elbows that bends way back, yeah, like that, that is a feature of the muscles, the ability, not the muscles, the bones, because that olecranon is able to, you have either a small olecranon or a large olecranon fossa, and that joint can hyperextend. It's a hyperextension is what that is. It's not the muscles. The muscle is not what prevents my arm from doing it. It's the bone. Did I get everything there? I think so. All right. Bones of the forearm. We have the ulnus and the radius. So the radius is the bone that it's called radius because it's able to, acts as the rotary bone, the bone that the body can rotate around. So it's lateral, it's the lateral bone, and then the ulna is the medial bone. All right? You'll notice, if you look at one of these, that the ulna is large, proximal, and thin, distal, and the radius is thin, proximally, and larger distally. So all this bone up here, when you're grabbing up here, that's mostly ulna, and down here in your wrist, that's mostly radius. Okay? Radius is the bone that rotates from the outside to the inside around the ulna during pronation. And then the ulna is the medial bone. So what do I have under radius and ulna? Do I have any idea?
For all of them, you have posterior notch and all of them.
What? No, it's okay. Oh, the olecranon. Yeah, let's say that together. Olecranon. Olecranon. So it's like a superhero name or something. I love it. Olecranon. Radius. It's got the head, the neck, and the radial tuberosity. Yeah, so right. We'll get to the thing in a minute, but the radius in isolation. But we see the head of the radius. If you actually look at it, it's like this little round facet that sits right on the capitulum of the condyle, but it allows it to like rotate around as you do this, as you pronate. That head of the radius is able to rotate on the capitulum. And then down here we have the styloid process of the radius and all of these little spikes. I talked about the radial tuberosity on the list there. We'll see that in a minute. So here's the anterior. Well, no, this is the anterior view. And you can see the radial tuberosity there. The radial tuberosity is where your bicep attaches. So a tuberosity is a part of a bone that a muscle attaches to and pulls on it. It pulls it out so that when you see the bone, like here's this one. This person was pretty strong. Look at that. Big radial tuberosity right there. This muscle attached to that bone and pulled the bone out. So I was telling you that muscle resculpts the bone. It created this tuberosity. So you imagine there's a muscle here that attaches to that, and it contracts, and it makes the arm do this. Radial tuberosity. Yes.
So when you're born, those two bones are really together?
Which? These two?
Yeah.
The radius and the ulnar. No, I think they're normally disposed to one another.
But they get bigger, wider apart.
No. What I'm saying is, I said a couple things. I don't know which you're confusing, but if you look at the shape of the bone, the radius is narrow proximally and wider distally, and the ulna is larger proximally and narrower distally. So they're like opposite in that regard. And then what was the other point? I didn't want to be confused.
That's a little bump thing that.
Oh, yeah. The radial tuberosity is where the bicep attaches, and that's what pulls the arm up. And the radial tuberosity. The tuberosity is where muscle attaches. You're next. Oscar.
Oh, I heard there was a myth that like the size of your like radius, like ear to ear, is the size of your shoe. Is that true?
I don't know. I actually don't know that. Maybe. It seems like a myth to me. But yeah, I don't know. I'm sure it's not far off. How about that? I'm sure they're not far off from one another. Because it would be a myth if it didn't have some kind of basis in some sort of reality. And I'm also sure that you can find plenty of people it doesn't fit for. But maybe most people, I don't know. I'm not sure.
Having so many drawings of like rotations and stuff is just so much more accurate.
Yeah. I think, this is probably an example of correlation versus causation. I don't think that your shoe size is dictated by the size of your forearm, but if you are a reasonably normally proportioned individual, they're about the same size. So, yeah. I mean, your foot and your forearm aren't really that directly causally related. All right, so let's keep trucking. Bones in your hand, it would be delightfully tortuous to make you guys learn the bones in the hand. I would never do that to you. But there are these, they are called the tarsal bones, carpal bones. The tarsal bones are in your foot. They're called the carpal bones. And then they are attached to the metacarpal bones, which are the long bones that are actually in the palm of your hand. Your wrist bones are kind of down here at the junction of your palm and what most people consider to be the wrist. That's the carpal bones. And then we have phalanges. Your phalanges are your fingers. All right? The only thing that I will point out is that there's this area here. So this is the anterior surface of your hand. There's this area called the Carpal Tunnel. The Carpal Tunnel, and probably most famous because of the syndrome associated with it. The Carpal Tunnel is formed by the hook of the hamate, which is not actually labeled here. The hook of the hamate, the trapezium, and this. Oh, here's the hook of the hamate. The pisiform and the trapezium. So these are bones that you can feel. So if you put your hand in the corner of your palm, you can feel this little bone. It's looks like a small marble or like a big pea in there. That's your pisiform. It's actually not even attached to any of the bone. It's embedded in the tendon of the flexor carpionaris muscle. But between that bone and another one that's on the other side of the base of your thumb, which is this trapezium, in between is the soft area, and that is the supply conduit for your hand. We call it the carpal tunnel. It's a tunnel because there's connective tissue that connects the pisiform and the trapezium. So all the blood, all of the nerves, all of the tendons that go into your hand to service it have to go through that tunnel. And if you get tendinitis because you're doing too much of whatever, like making bread or using pliers or typing on a computer or something like that, you get tendinitis, inflamed tendon, then it can like swell, and it's in this restricted area. It can press on the blood supply, it can press on the nerves, you lose feeling, you lose blood supply in your hand. It can be very problematic for those people. So, sure to like be nice to those tendons, get some good stretches on them. Yeah, we'll talk about it a little bit later. Yeah, that's the like when I was telling you downward dog, like spreading those palms, learning to like open up across that connective tissue in the palm. Take care of those hands, man. Take care of them. All right, onward. Still good. All right. On to the pelvis. This is the last hard bone we have to talk about. So the pelvis, the pelvic girdle, is actually made of 3 bones. Most people think of it just as my hips. But your hips are 3 individual bones per side. There is the ilium, the ischium, and the pubis. 3 bones that fuse in early childhood. They fuse into a single bone. All of you have a single bone, but they're considered separately the ilium, the ischium, and the pubis. So let's go through a few of the details here. What did I have on the list that I think was important? Yeah. Okay, cool, perfect. First important thing is this thing called the iliac crest. So this, people think of this as their hips. It's that bony ridge that you can feel all the way from the points in the front all the way across, around into your low back. That's the iliac crest. Super important because that's an attachment line for a lot of muscles in the posterior and lateral compartment for all the glutes that are going down, and the quadratus lumborum, and the other muscles of the low back that are moving up towards the ribs. Right? So that iliac crest is an important attachment point for a lot of muscles in the body. I don't have it on there, but this anterior superior iliac spine, that is actually the point of your hips that are right there. That anterior superior iliac spine. There is an interesting anatomical feature about it. You see there's this notch here, this anterior inferior iliac spine, and a notch between the two of them. There's actually a nerve that passes through that notch right there that serves the skin on your thighs. And sometimes if you have a pair of pants, a pair of jeans that are too tight, they're like hip huggers or whatever, that like cut just below that spine, you can get compression of that nerve and actually lose sensation there. That happens sometimes. People, I don't know, I like to wear nice, loosely fitting clothes, don't restrict my motion, but some people, go with the fashion and it does have some pathology associated with that. What else is important here? So there's the acetabulum. Acetabulum. Sorry, the text is so small. Acetabulum is the socket that the hip joint fits into. It's called the acetabulum, and this is far out. I'm sure nobody can guess, but I'll give you a chance. They don't want to guess. It's pretty wild. Look at the name. The name suggests it a little bit.
Do you produce acetic acid?
It is definitely related to acetic acid. You're on the right track. That's all I could ever hope for you to get. It doesn't produce acetic acid. So, in Roman times, a lot of our language is based off Latin, right? In Roman times, they would drink out of metal cups, right? But sometimes they would need to have some vinegar, some red wine vinegar or whatever, and to dip stuff into. And what happens when you put vinegar into a copper cup? It tastes nasty, dude. It dissolves the metal, right? So they didn't like to do that. So they would actually cut. I don't think humans. I imagine cows, but they would cut this bone out of the hip joint and use it as a vinegar cup. Acetabulum means vinegar cup because the cartilage that was in the bottom of that joint would not get dissolved by the vinegar. So it comes from acetic acid. Acetic acid, the acetic acid bowl or vinegar bowl is the acetabulum. That's why it's called that. But it's just a hip socket where the femur, your thigh bone, attaches. Right. Some other important things is the ischial tuberosity. So, some of you who may have been to a yoga class have heard the term your sit bones. The sit bones, right? That's the sacral ischial tuberosity, SIT. It actually is a real thing. So it's not just like the bones you sit on, it's the sacroischial tuberosity or the ischial tuberosity. It's that sit bone. And it's obviously the bone that you sit on. What else? What's on? Did I talk about that? Is the obturator foramen on there? It is, okay. So the obturator foramen is this hole that's right down here, inferior to the acetabulum. There's going to be some important, these pants actually don't give me that much freedom. There are some muscles that attach to the inside of the pelvis. This isn't a good diagram, but the inside of the pelvic bowl and exit the pelvis to attach to the femur and come out through the obturator foramen. In fact, the muscle is called the obturator. But it's one of the muscles that helps with adduction, posterior adduction of the hip, or bringing the leg towards the midline. We'll get to adduction.
So, wait, where is it going from?
It's so sacrum is back here, and there's muscles that's attached back here that are coming out of the obturator foramen and attaching on the medial. Imagine the femur is right here. It's attaching. It's coming out of that hole and attaching to what's called the lesser trochanter of the hip. And so when your hips are like this, when it's like this, that obturator is going to help your leg do this. All right. What else? Any other terms on there? Pubic symphysis we covered. That's it. Oh, the sacroiliac joint. We'll get to that. Let me show that. All right. So here is the medial view. The medial view. Your sacrum should be coming out at you right here. This is the sacrum. And so that joint between the sacrum and the iliac bone is called the sacroiliac joint. You've probably heard of that joint before. It's an important joint for a lot of reasons. It's really the main bony attachment between the axial skeleton and the lower extremity appendicular skeleton. It's that SI joint. So there can be a lot of tension in that SI joint. All right. It's also a crucial joint during childbirth. I think I've already mentioned that. Like the loosening of the SI joint. I'll talk about that more when I talk about the fascial planes. I talk about fascia. Maybe talk about childbirth. Yoga. We can get Mari to talk about it. Maybe I don't want to put her on the spot too much. I'm not sure what her anatomy is, but yeah, this is the SI joint, the sacroiliac joint. And they call it the auricular surface. Auricular means ear. I don't know, it looked like an ear to those people that named it. But this is just for the sacrum, sacroiliac joint. It's that joint right here between sacrum and the iliac crest, the sacroiliac joint. So that's an important joint for us to talk about. Okay, the differences between the male and the female pelvis. There are some anatomical differences besides genitalia between men and women. Men have a slightly different cranium, and their pelvis is a little bit different. So in men, this pubic notch here is more like the peace sign. It's less than 90 degrees. All right. Whereas in females, it's more like the index finger to thumb, not the peace sign. It's like this. So it's over 100 degrees. That pubic notch is larger, which represents the wideness, the width of the female pelvis. The difference, so I didn't talk about the ischial spine, but there are these ischial spines, and there's a difference in that width between the two of them. There's also, I think, yeah, this is not, I couldn't find, there wasn't like a PowerPoint clip art shape that actually fit the male pelvis very well. But the male one is shaped more like a heart. It's kind of pressed down, whereas the female one is much more oval. And of course, all of this is because that's where the magic happens, right? That's where the birth canal is, and the child's head has to pass. So, Mac is about to die. Okay. So the other, I couldn't actually find a picture that shows the. Couldn't find a picture that shows the lateral view, but the tilt of the male pelvis is different than the female pelvis. The female pelvis is posteriorly oriented compared to the male, which just has an anterior arrangement to it. There are a couple other differences. The center of gravity in females is within the range of the SI joint, so it's usually at or below L1, whereas it's at the or L5, whereas in men it's at the L4, L5 juncture above the SI joint. That's just like the center of gravity. And that's mostly because men tend to have a lot of mass up in the shoulders, and women have more mass in the pelvic region, so it shifts the center of gravity. It does have some ramifications for the practice of certain yoga poses. What other? Another thing. So the architecture of the femur as it fits into the pelvis is different. There's this thing called the Q angle, and the Q angle is the angle between vertical, which is this, and the angle between the patella or kneecap and what's called the greater trochanter of the femur. All right, so that angle is wider in women, and that is essentially due to the wideness of the pelvis, that wider distance between the ischial spines, which pushes that trochanter further more laterally. And this does have some ramifications in terms of certain yoga poses that we'll talk about. What else do I want to say here? Well, I'll just make the point. Well, no, I'll do it later. Need to get on down the road here a bit. So the femur. Femur has the head and neck. The head is what fits into the acetabulum and the neck. Two important features are the greater and lesser trochanter, which I remember what the word trochanter actually, what the word origin was. I don't remember what the Latin, why we call it trochanter. But trochanter in general is just these bony projections that have a lot of muscles attached to it. So there's a huge number of muscles that attach to the greater and lesser trochanters. And in general, the greater trochanter is for abduction, abduction, we'll talk about that terminology later, and the lesser trochanter is for adduction. What else is on the list there for trochanter, or for femur? The condyles, okay, yeah, so there's a medial and lateral condyle. Condyle means just what condyle means. It's like a cartilage-covered surface, medial and lateral one. That's how it attaches to the tibia and fibula. The patella, the kneecap, not much for me to say here about it. The fibula. Tibia is the main big shin bone that comes in contact with the femur. The fibula is the thin lateral bone. It's much smaller, it's lateral. Tibia is medial. And it's going to have some condyles that it attaches to the femur with. But then in the ankle, there's going to be this another word. God, these words. It's a medical word. It's driving you crazy. One thing. You'll get them in your brain. Malleolus. Malleolus. Oh,
Harry Potter.
yeah. Yeah. Like all these great names for children. Like, get older and have kids. You're like, I name you Malleolus. Yeah, malleolus is just your ankle bones. So you can feel them, you see them. The two big bones on either side of your ankle. The one on the medial side is the medial one, the one on the lateral side is the lateral. Is there anything else on the list with tibia and fibula? No. No. Okay, so then here's the ankles, the bones of the foot. There's all these tarsal bones, just like the carpal bones, tarsal bones in the foot. The only one of these that you gotta memorize the name of is the calcaneus. It's your heel bone. And I'm making you remember that one just because the calcaneus attaches to the calcaneal tendon. If you look at this guy right here, you'll see the calcaneus. The calcaneal tendon attaches to the back there, and that is commonly known as the Achilles tendon, right? That's where your calf muscles attach to the calcaneus, the calcaneal tendon. So we will talk about that. It's what helps you do this. The tarsal bones attach to the metatarsal bones attach to the phalanges, totally analogous to the hand. Here's a better view of the calcaneus. The calcaneal tendon attaches right here at the calcaneal tuberosity. So this is a good thing to notice here. I like this diagram, and I'll point this out. I said this in physical practice the other day. There's this longitudinal arch, but there's also a transverse arch that goes this way over your foot too. It's good to be aware that your foot is a little bit like a cup. It's not just a bridge, it's a little bit like a cup. So, yeah. And you can even see it here in this diagram. You can see how it's kind of, there's a transverse arch that runs from medial to lateral. And that helps with the spring force of the foot. I just want to jump, yes. That's it! Yay! Still got plenty of time. Okay, so you have another half hour. You can stay and go over all this stuff in the lab, or you can leave. I don't care. I'm leaving. If you want to come back some other time, you can come back. If you don't, if you feel like you absorbed it all now, that's fine too. But I gotta go with my kids. Cool. Any questions? Yes.
Like, do we need to memorize all this, or do we just
Yeah. I want you to be very familiar with it, so when I use the terms, you will know what I'm talking about. And to kind of keep you on point, I will set up a little lab exam. It'll probably have 3, 6, 9, 12 stations. It'll probably something like that, maybe 15, where there will be I'll probably put a microscope on a couple of the benches and a bunch of these anatomical bones and stuff. There'll be a label, and it'll say something like, name this feature of this bone, and you'll say iliac crest. So, do you need to know, are you going to have to recount every single thing? No. I'm going to ask you 12 things. I just talked about 200. But, it's just sort of like a shotgun approach. Do the best you can. They're I'm calling it a lab practical or a test or something, but it's not. It's really just I have to grade you somehow in these labs. And that's
how much
No. Next week we do goniometry. And then the week after that, I'll introduce muscles. And the week after that, we'll have another muscle lab. And we'll take a field trip to the museum. And then the week after that, we'll have the lab. Practical, yeah. And it'll cover bones and muscles. And slides. Yeah. Yeah, until then, yeah. Plenty of time. Yeah, it's the memorization part of the semester where you're just getting the words in your brain so we